Hey everyone, I wanted to cover a question that I see all the time related to which bands should I be getting to do resistance band training, specifically with loop bands. So today I want to do just a quick overview of the types of bands that are out there for loops, specifically the manufacturing process that are the two main categories that you'll find out there. You're going to find the mold-injected bands and then the layered latex loop bands. They both have pros and cons, but I do have an opinion on which one I feel is better to use for resistance band training. For this, I have this, it's a leaky green. It's rated at 50 to 125 pounds, 41-inch band. And then I've got a serious steel band. Again, 41 inches. This one's rated 50 to 20, so they're almost identical. The manufacturer says this one provides 5 more pounds of pressure. Now, this band here actually kind of has some history. I've actually used this band for about 3 years. This one is new out of the box. It's really never been used at all for resistance band training. So it's kind of interesting. We're going to be, basically comparing a 3-year-old band against a brand new band. So not exactly apples to apples, but I think it's going to kind of help prove the point of this video towards the end. So for the first segment of this, what I want to do is cover what is the big difference between these mold-injected bands and these layered loop bands. Well, I mean, just based off of the name, it kind of explains what's going on here. These mold-injected bands, there's a mold and they inject liquid latex into them and then let it harden. That's basically how this band is manufactured. It's a very simple manufacturing process, which ends up lowering the cost to make these types of bands. The serious steel band I have here is a layered band, and just like it sounds, it's a continuous loop of layered latex, and they're very small. They're bonded. I don't actually know how many loops are actually done in here, but there is a lot of loops in here from what I can tell. If I had to guess, at least 20. So this single solid piece, this one, again, it's a solid piece, but it's layered over and over on itself again. For the durability part of this demonstration, I just wanted to give a little brief history on this band here. This is a band that I used for about 3 years. Never had a problem with it. Great band. This is the serious steel band. Sometimes, depending on how you use them and anchor them, you can get little nicks on them. I didn't feel totally comfortable continuing to use this band, so I replaced it with a brand new one. So this is the band that we're going to end up, putting some cuts in today and just seeing how it reacts to damage. Same with this band. This is brand new, actually. The whole set for this was less than 20 bucks, came with 4 bands. The leaky green, I mean, they're almost identical to the serious steel green in the weight specifications, the sizes. I mean, these are almost identical. So I just wanted to kind of set the stage there. I realize they're both green. That might be kind of hard to follow along. I will continue to kind of point out which one I am working with. And I think it'll be pretty evident, once we get into it, which band is really, which band. So the first test I'm going to do, and I've never done this before, so you're going to be learning with me today, but I'm going to take a scissors. This is it's just a regular household scissors. It's sharp. I don't have any way to quantitatively measure how much force I'm going to be applying to it. You'll just kind of have to listen to how I'm describing it to really get kind of feel for it, like how tough it is. You may actually be able to see it. I assure you I'm not going to be doing anything to bias the outcome of this. I am just going to put a scissors through it. If I feel like they're both the same, I will tell you they're both the same. If I feel like one's easier to cut than the other, I will let you know that as well. So I'm going to start with the leaky band. I'm going to take the scissors here. I'm going to get that right down there in the crease, and I'm going to cut it. That was pretty easy to cut. Was not bad at all. So very easy to cut with the scissors. This is the Serious Steel band. This is the layered latex. I just cut the injected mold band. I'm going to go ahead and cut this guy now. It kind of pains me to do that, but we'll see how it goes. Just a little bit harder. A little bit at the edge, it's getting a little harder there, but I mean, pretty much identical in terms of, you know, the amount of force I had to put into to cut it. You know, these layers are so thin, you really can't see the layers of the Serious Steel, but it's there. You can kind of see, like, I actually had to do like cut through and then cut again to get through. With the Serious Steel, I cut through and it kind of got tough, so I had to kind of open the scissors up again, cut down. Maybe the Serious Steel was a little bit harder to cut, but generally almost identical with the scissors. So that was the first test. The second test I want to do, and I think this is going to be more interesting for people because this is more realistic. Most of you aren't cutting your bands in half like I'm doing today. So I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. I'm going to start about here, and I'm going to put a nick in here. Pretty sizable nick. Again, I'm wearing safety glasses, so that's a pretty good nick. I don't think most people would get a nick that big, but they could. I mean, if you started something, you know, maybe a little bit. This is a nick that maybe. We'll see. So anyways, I'm gonna try to basically tear this, or I can just try to actually pull it apart. And it came right apart. That was no problem at all. That came right apart. So I actually want to redo that again because I want to try that with a smaller nick. You know, this is probably about 5 millimeters. It's 5 millimeter cut. You know, that's like what we're looking at here. I can tell you that this Serious Steel band has these types of nicks all over it. I'll show those to you when I get there, but again, I'm gonna try to pull it, see how it goes. Okay, it held up there, but I'm pretty sure that's gonna continue to move. Again, you know, if you just kind of tweak it a little bit like this, it does tear very easily. And then once that tear gets out to about here, you're basically, the failure point is almost instantaneous. So that is the mold-injected band from the Leaky brand. So onto the Serious Steel. So again, this is layered latex. I'm gonna do kind of a similar experiment. What I'm going to do is, before I started out, I kind of put a big nick in it. So I'm gonna try to put a bigger nick in this one too. I can already tell you this is much harder to cut through than that Leaky, but I've got it here. So pretty sizable nick, right? Pretty sizable neck. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to pull this apart now. And we're gonna see how it goes. Oh, okay, move the camera a little bit. It did fail. It took a lot more effort, I'll tell you that. So these layered latex bands do put up more of a fight, but if the nick is big enough, they will snap. So like I was saying before, let's see if I can find it on here. There it is. So like that's a nick. And these are pretty easy to pick up if you're like anchoring these things to metal anchors. These can get picked up, but it seems like to me, there's kind of like a critical mass point with these nicks where, you know, they can survive quite a bit of force, but they'll kind of, eventually end up giving up on you. So I'm gonna put a smaller nick in here, which we did with the Leaky brand too. Fresh cut there. And we're gonna try to do this guy now and see how it goes. Just make sure that it's going. So this one did a lot better. That was a lot of work. So what I'm going to try to do now is just tear it, right? And just kind of see how that goes in terms of force. So much harder right off the bat, way harder to do. In fact, I don't even think I can do it. That's the little nick. Yeah, it seems like once you hit that critical mass, it just kind of, you know, you're setting yourself up for those catastrophic failures. But these Serious Steel, these layered latex bands, X3 uses them, Harambe uses them, they're fault tolerant. They are way more fault tolerant than this guy. So just again, I mean, just for demonstration purposes, I will put another nick in here. Little nick. And again, these are both rated for the same weight, and it just comes right apart. There's nothing to it. I mean, you could cut these all day. This is not even a lot of force, you know. I'll just even put a little nick in here. And I think this is the things, these are the ones that are hard to see, right? Like you pick your band up, you can barely see that, right? But you start stretching it and it tears very easily. So once these mold-injected bands get a tear in them, I mean, they go fast. So, and I've heard a lot of stories from people where these bands just snap, and man, is that scary, especially if you've got a band that's like in a face pull position or something like that. So, I mean, from a durability perspective, these Serious Steel bands are superior. This is the Serious Steel. Again, you really can't see the layers in there because it's so tightly bonded. You're really not going to be able to see it, but I mean, if I'm going to pick a band, I'm definitely going 100% with the layered latex, 100%. So we just got done with that durability test, and you know, there's a lot of factors to consider when buying a band. For me, the number one is safety. I need to be confident that these bands are going to hold up, and I'm not going to be dealing with any type of, you know, catastrophic failure. I recommend everyone wear eye protection when using resistance bands. I wear protective eyewear when I work out. And again, I've never had one of these Serious Steel or X3 bands fail on me, and I do not use these mold-injected bands. The advantage to these mold-injected bands are they're cheap. I mean, I bought a 4-pack of bands for like less than 20 bucks. They're cheap, and I know a lot of people, money's a real thing to worry about, and I totally get it. But when it comes to your safety, you know, spend the 2x, maybe 3x price point, get the bands that are they're gonna not fail on you. So one thing I wanted to show you guys is when you do buy bands, you know, Amazon is probably the place most people are buying their stuff today. And that's fine. You just really need to understand what you're buying, right? So this is a 12-inch Serious Steel. It's the same as the green band that we just cut up. The only difference is it's a 12-inch. This is something I'll put around my thighs and kind of do like lateral walks. But they're good to have. There's a couple mini loops supported in the app. There's not a ton of mini loop support, honestly. Like the utility of the mini loops are somewhat limited. but where I can find a good fit for them, I get them in. But I just want to use this band because it's really easy to demonstrate. You can see it here. I have this kind of like this little seam here. And if you have the seam on both sides, see, I'm gonna flip the band around now, go around, and here's another seam. So you can see this was a continuous piece of latex looped around until they got it to the other side. So that's how you can tell when you've got a layered loop band. So one other thing I want to talk about, and it's definitely interesting, the layered latex bands and the mold-injected bands, this one on my left is mold-injected. Again, it's a leaky brand. This is a serious steel. These are smaller bands, but it's easier for me to demonstrate this. And I'll try to describe it to you. And honestly, like if you just had these two bands and you did this, you'd be able to feel the difference right away. But these bands, they kind of have almost like a stopping point. Like you stretch them and they just kind of stop and they don't want to go anymore. It's kind of like this, like, I don't know, sticking point, if you will, where like they just kind of stop. The layered latex bands are interesting, right? They kind of just let you pull way further. I'm pulling this almost twice as far. And you know, when a band kind of gets to that point where it just wants to stop you, that's usually the point where either you're going to start causing deformities in the latex, or you're going to have a failure. So that sticking point is something to kind of like feel for in your bands. Like if you're doing like a really kind of interesting, you know, movement where like the range of motion really challenges the band and you kind of feel it sticking and you're really trying to pull through it, there might be a chance that that band's going to snap on you. So these do have a much different tension profile than the layered latex bands. And I prefer, again, the layered latex bands. It just feels more naturally through a range of motion. You know, you can just imagine that strength curve or that tension curve or that force curve just kind of ramping up in a nice gradual fashion versus the injected bands where it kind of goes up and then it just kind of shoots up. It stops because the force just kind of like the band's at its max capacity. I don't know what the property is in the manufacturing process that really causes that difference, but it is a very noticeable difference. I feel like the layered latex bands they just feel better to me than the mold-injected bands. I have used other mold-injected bands, and I was not a big fan of how they felt. I could be biased. I kind of started out on the layered bands, but you know, my opinion is that the layered bands they feel better to work with. So in conclusion, you know, this is the first time I've ever actually destroyed bands like this. Super happy I was able to share it with you. I think there's a lot of valuable information in here that you can use to kind of make your decision-making process. You can see like this is my mold injected. That's actually the port where the latex came in. You know, I'm personally not a fan of these mold injected bands. I need to have a high degree of confidence that my bands are not going to fail on me, especially if you're using bigger bands. I mean, these are probably mid-tier in terms of like, you know, resistance. Serious Steel has, you know, their 6.5 band. It's a beast. It's basically an analog of the X3 Elite band. But when those bands, I mean, have 250 pounds of tension on them and they snap, that's a problem. You can imagine doing a bicep curl with a bar, and then if that one side of it fails, that bar is going to fly up. You know, you don't want to mess around with bands. So, you know, my recommendation to you is to pick high quality layered latex bands from a reputable manufacturer. You know, it's worth the extra money to know you're getting a quality product. If you do want to get Serious Steel bands, you can use the code RB10 to get 10% off your purchase. I think they're wonderful bands. I own the 12-inch bands, I own the 32-inch bands, I own the 37-inch bands, and I own the 41-inch bands. And I pretty much use them all in some capacity. they've been great to me. I will say I had the X3 bar originally too. Actually, I ended up just eating up a couple of the bands, so I swapped them out. The X3 bands are almost the same as the Serious Steel bands, both incredibly high quality. So either one, don't worry about if you're using the X3 or Serious Steel or Harambe. These are all the layered latex bands. They are the best you can get. You're going to feel very confident using these bands. I would say your confidence after seeing how easily, you know, these mold injected bands tear once there's a nick in them. You just don't want to mess around with these. Thanks for watching.